Hay un momento que la mayoría de las mujeres de mi edad conocemos, y casi ninguna de nosotras lo hablamos. Te levantas de la cama, o del sofá, o de la silla de la cocina, y por 2 o 3 segundos el mundo no está en su lugar. Alargas la mano, hacia la pared, el mostrador, la espalda de la silla, y esperas. No se lo dices a nadie, lo guardas en el cajón de envejecer, y sigues adelante. Yo hice esto durante 2 años, antes de entender lo que esos momentos realmente me estaban diciendo. Este video trata de eso, de qué significan, qué los causa, y las 8 cosas específicas que yo hacía cada día, que estaban destruyendo el sistema que se suponía me protegía. Si has tenido ese momento, el de agarrarte de la pared, esperar a que el mundo se coloque, quédate conmigo, porque lo que encontré cuando fui a buscar respuestas no fue lo que esperaba, y la mayoría no tenía nada que ver con la edad. Antes de continuar, si encuentras útil esto, si algo de lo que vivo suena como tu propia vida, por favor considera suscribirte. Hago estos videos para mujeres que quieren información honesta sobre lo que realmente está pasando en sus cuerpos y lo que realmente pueden hacer al respecto. Eso es todo lo que es Frances. Eso es todo lo que es este canal. Si eso es lo que buscas, me alegraría que te quedaras. Ahora, déjame contarte sobre la mañana que cambió la forma en que pienso en todo esto. Me desperté y el teléfono sonaba. No como en mi mañana típica. El teléfono sonaba y me incorporé rápido, me levanté rápido y caminé rápido hacia el sonido. Y a la mitad de la habitación el mundo se inclinó. No dramáticamente, no lo suficiente para derribarme, pero lo suficiente para que me detuviera, pusiera la mano en la cómoda y me quedara allí mientras el teléfono seguía sonando y la habitación volvía a su nivel. No contesté el teléfono. Me quedé allí 30 segundos, sosteniendo esa cómoda y pensando con claridad. Eso no era normal. That was not just getting older. Something specific just happened, and I want to know what it was. I missed the call. It was my daughter checking in on a Tuesday morning. I called her back 5 minutes later and told her I'd been in the garden, which was not true, because I didn't want to have the conversation that telling her the truth would have started. And then I spent the next several weeks paying attention to something I had been studiously not paying attention to for 2 years. The small instabilities, the moments of reaching, the particular way I'd started navigating certain rooms, always close to a wall, always near something solid. I had been doing this without acknowledging that I was doing it. And when I finally acknowledged it, I understood that my body had been quietly compensating for something that I had never addressed, because I hadn't wanted to see it. What I found when I went looking were 8 things I was doing, or not doing, every single day that were working against my own balance without my knowledge. None of them dramatic, all of them fixable. Most of them so ordinary I would have laughed if someone had suggested they mattered. They matter. Let me tell you about each one. The first mistake was the one that caused that morning. I was standing up too fast. When you go from lying down or sitting to standing, your body needs to do something that sounds simple and is actually quite complex. It needs to redirect blood flow upward toward the brain, against gravity, rapidly, in response to a sudden change in orientation. When you're younger, this happens so fast and so reliably that you never notice it. As we get older, the system that manages it becomes slightly slower and slightly less responsive. The medical name for what happens when it fails is orthostatic hypotension, a temporary drop in blood pressure upon standing that causes the brief dizziness or lightheadedness that most of us have filed under nothing and moved on from. What makes it worse, certain medications that many women my age take routinely. Blood pressure medications, diuretics, some antidepressants, certain antihistamines, all of them can amplify the drop that happens when you stand too fast. I was taking 2 of these. My doctor had mentioned dizziness as a possible side effect at the beginning. I had not connected that information to what was happening in my bedroom on Tuesday mornings because 2 years had passed and I had reclassified it as age. What I do now is so simple, I'm almost embarrassed to say it. I sit on the edge of the bed for 1 full minute before I stand. Not 30 seconds. 1 minute. Dejo que mis piernas cuelguen. Dejo que mi presión arterial se iguale. Dejo que el sistema que maneja esta transición haga su trabajo sin apresurarlo. Luego me paro. El mareo matutino se detuvo casi de inmediato. No completamente, no eternamente. Todavía hay mañanas así. Pero la frecuencia bajó de manera tan drástica en las 2 primeras semanas que obtuve mi respuesta. Había estado creando el problema yo misma cada mañana al negarme a darle a mi propio cuerpo los 30 segundos extra que necesitaba. El teléfono puede sonar. El teléfono tiene contestadora. Mi equilibrio vale más que la llamada. El segundo error que cometí fue el que descubrí cuando mi hermana vino de visita. Mi hermana siempre ha sido alguien que hace que un hogar se sienta acogedor. Cosas suaves por todas partes, cojines, mantas y en sus pies, siempre estas hermosas y gruesas calcetas de lana de cualquier color que combinara con lo que estaba usando ese día. She walked around her house in those socks on her polished wood floors with the complete confidence of someone who has been doing this for 20 years without incident. 2 months after that visit, she slipped in her hallway. She grabbed the wall and didn't fall this time, but she called me shaken, and we talked for an hour. And somewhere in that conversation, I looked down at my own feet and realized I was wearing something not very different from what she was wearing. Soft-soled slippers with no grip. I had been wearing them for years because they were comfortable and because inside the house felt like it should be different from outside the house, softer, more forgiving, less like something required effort. Here is what I had not understood. The foot is not just a platform. It is an instrument. The sole of the foot contains thousands of nerve endings that are constantly sending information to the brain about pressure, texture, slope, and surface. This information is one of the 3 primary inputs the balance system uses to keep you upright. When you cover your feet in thick, soft material that absorbs and blunts all of that information, you are sending your balance system partial data. It is working with half the information it needs, and it is managing until the moment when managing isn't enough. I put on proper shoes inside the house. Closed-toe, rubber sole with actual traction, the same kind of shoe I wear to go to the post office. My sister thought this was extreme when I told her. I told her I thought it was the opposite of extreme. I thought it was paying attention. I still have the slippers. They sit beside the bed, and I put them on for the 30 seconds between waking up and getting to the bathroom where my shoes are. That's all they're for now. The third mistake surprised me the most because it seemed too simple to be real. I wasn't drinking enough water. And I wasn't drinking enough water in a specific way that matters for balance. I wasn't drinking it in the morning, before movement, before the first demands of the day. Here is the connection that I had not understood. Dehydration, even mild dehydration, affects the fluid in the inner ear. The inner ear contains the vestibular system, the primary organ of balance, the one that tells your brain which direction is up, how fast you're moving, when you're tilting. It relies on fluid to function correctly. When that fluid is reduced by even a small percentage, the signal quality degrades. You don't feel dehydrated. You feel slightly less stable, without being able to say why. After 65, the thirst mechanism becomes less reliable. Your body can be meaningfully dehydrated and not send a strong enough thirst signal to make you drink. You can go through an entire morning thinking you're fine because you don't feel thirsty, while your vestibular system is operating on reduced fluid and sending slightly degraded signals, and attributing the results to age. I now drink a full glass of water before I do anything else in the morning. Before the tea, before the bathroom, before I look at anything. It is already poured, and sitting on my nightstand when I go to sleep, so there is no decision required, no effort, no possibility of forgetting. I drink it. Then the day starts. On the days I do this, I am more stable than on the days I don't. I have enough data now that I trust this completely. The fourth mistake was the one that most surprised me intellectually, because it required me to understand something about how balance actually works that I had never been taught. I was using my eyes for everything and training nothing else. The balance system has three components. El sistema vestibular en el oído interno, que acabo de describir. La propriocepción, la red de receptores en los músculos y articulaciones en todo el cuerpo que rastrean la posición y el movimiento. Y la visión. De estos tres, la visión es la más dominante. Es tan eficaz para proporcionar información de equilibrio que rutinariamente compensa debilidades importantes en los otros dos, sin que te des cuenta de que existe tal debilidad. Lo que significa que puedes tener un sistema vestibular seriamente comprometido y una propriocepción gravemente degradada, y aún así caminar con la sensación de estar perfectamente estable, siempre que estés en una habitación bien iluminada, con buenas gafas puestas. Y luego se va la luz, o te levantas en la noche por un vaso de agua sin encender la luz, o estás afuera y el sol se esconde detrás de una niebla y la iluminación cambia de repente de una forma que momentáneamente confunde tu visión. Y el sistema de equilibrio, que estaba funcionando perfectamente, según todo lo que sabías, de repente se queda con casi nada con lo que trabajar. Por eso es que tantos tropiezos en personas mayores ocurren en luz baja o en luz de transición, al pasar de una habitación brillante a un pasillo oscuro o al salir fuera a un interior sombreado. No es que haya cambiado algo físicamente, es que la compensación que enmascaraba la verdadera situación de los otros dos sistemas se eliminó de repente. Empecé a hacer algo que no me lleva tiempo adicional en el día y que ha cambiado esto de forma medible. Me cepillo los dientes con los ojos cerrados. Me quedo parado en la cocina esperando la tetera con los ojos cerrados. Hago 30 segundos una vez al día, parado en un pie con los ojos cerrados, cerca del mostrador, para poder sostenerme si es necesario. Estas pequeñas prácticas obligan al sistema vestibular y a la propiocepción a trabajar sin la compensación visual. Se fortalecen porque se están usando. Y la brecha entre lo que puedo hacer con los ojos abiertos y lo que puedo hacer con los ojos cerrados se ha vuelto más pequeña con los años de práctica. The goal is not to walk around with your eyes closed. The goal is to have a balanced system that works when your vision can't be fully relied upon, which is exactly when you need it most. The fifth mistake was the one I would have dismissed most quickly if someone had described it to me before I understood the mechanism. I was sitting for too long without moving. Not all day. I'm not someone who sits all day. But regularly, in stretches of an hour or more, reading or watching something or on the telephone, staying seated for longer than the body was designed to tolerate without consequence. Here is what happens in the foot and lower leg during prolonged sitting that has a direct effect on balance. Fluid accumulates in the tissues. This is visible in the ankle swelling that many women my age notice by afternoon. Los receptores nerviosos en la planta del pie que están transmitiendo esa constante corriente de información, de presión y posición al cerebro, se comprimen parcialmente y la calidad de su señal se degrada. Y los músculos de la pantorrilla, que actúan como una especie de bomba para empujar la sangre de regreso hacia el corazón, han estado inactivos el tiempo suficiente como para que la circulación hacia las extremidades inferiores se haya ralentizado. Cuando te levantas después de 1 hora o más de esto, estás parado sobre pies que están dando al cerebro información ligeramente errónea, con una presión arterial que no se ha ajustado completamente a la vertical, y con músculos de la pantorrilla que no han recordado que tienen un trabajo que hacer. En esos primeros minutos al ponerte de pie, eres más vulnerable a la inestabilidad que en casi cualquier otro momento del día. Yo pongo una alarma silenciosa en mi temporizador de cocina por 50 minutos. Cuando suena, me levanto y camino. No lejos, hacia la ventana y de regreso, hacia la tetera y de regreso. Alrededor del perímetro de la habitación, una vez. Enough to interrupt the accumulation, to wake up the receptors, to restart the pump. Then, I sit back down. The afternoon instability that I used to notice, that particular feeling of uncertain footing in the hours after lunch, has almost entirely gone since I started doing this. Almost entirely. That's enough. The sixth mistake was the one I felt most foolish about when I finally understood it, because the answer was literally attached to my body, and I had been ignoring it. I had not been taking care of my feet. Not in terms of appearance. I'm not talking about polish and presentation. I'm talking about the functional condition of the instrument I described earlier. The one with thousands of nerve endings sending constant information to the brain about the ground beneath me. Thickened skin on the heel and ball of the foot, which develops naturally over years of walking and goes unaddressed, acts as insulation between those nerve endings and the ground. The receptors are still there, but they're receiving a muffled signal, like trying to hear through a wall. Nails that have grown too long alter the way the toe makes contact with the shoe and with the ground, changing the pressure distribution across the foot in ways that shift your center of gravity slightly without your knowing it. And skin that is chronically dry and cracked, which is extremely common after 60 and is rarely discussed as a health issue rather than a cosmetic one, changes the elasticity and flexibility of the foot in ways that further reduce the quality of ground feedback. I went to a podiatrist for the first time at 74 because a friend suggested it, and I went to humor her. I left with feet that felt like they belonged to a different body. The difference in how I walked, the confidence of each step, the quality of information I was receiving from the ground was immediate and genuinely startling. I now have a simple evening practice. After washing, I spend 2 minutes with a cream on my feet, specifically on the heels, on the ball of the foot, on the spaces between the toes. Not quickly, not carelessly, with enough attention to notice what is changing over time and what might need professional attention. It takes 2 minutes. It keeps the instrument calibrated. I think of it the same way I think of putting new batteries in a smoke detector. Not glamorous, not exciting, entirely necessary. The seventh mistake was the hardest to address because it required a kind of attention that I had been avoiding without quite admitting I was avoiding it. I had not looked carefully at the relationship between my medications and my balance. I want to be precise about what I mean by this, because I am not suggesting that anyone reading this should stop or change their medications based on anything I say. I am describing something more specific, the importance of being an informed and attentive observer of your own body in relation to what you're putting in it, and of bringing specific observations to your doctor rather than waiting for your doctor to ask. There are a significant number of medications commonly prescribed to women over 65 that list dizziness, lightheadedness, or unsteadiness as side effects. Blood pressure medications, diuretics, sleep aids, certain antihistamines available without prescription, some medications for anxiety, some for gastric reflux. These effects are often mentioned briefly at the start of treatment and then never mentioned again, which means that if they appear gradually over months or years rather than immediately, the connection is rarely made. I have a friend, not Ruth, a different friend, someone still very much present in my life, who had been taking an antihistamine for seasonal allergies for several years. She had also, over approximately the same period, become less steady on her feet than she had been before. She had attributed this entirely to age. One spring, she ran out of her antihistamine and couldn't get to the pharmacy for 10 days. During those 10 days, she felt more stable than she had in months. When she reconnected those two things, she went to her doctor not with a complaint, but with a specific observation and a question. They found an alternative that didn't have the same effect on her balance. She told me this, and I went home and sat at my kitchen table with a list of every medication I take. I spent an hour looking at the known side effects of each one, not to alarm myself, but to inform myself. I then kept a simple log for 3 weeks, a single word each morning, stable or less stable, alongside whatever I had taken the night before and that morning. The log told me something useful that I then brought to my doctor as information rather than as worry. That is all I am suggesting. Pay attention, keep a record, bring what you find to the person who can do something about it. You know your body's daily experience better than anyone. That knowledge is only useful if you use it. The 8th mistake is the one that contains all the others, and it is the simplest to state, and perhaps the most difficult to truly hear. I had never trained my balance deliberately because I had never had a serious problem with it. I had assumed that balance was a static condition, something you either had or didn't have, something that would decline gradually with age in a way that would announce itself clearly enough to address when the time came. I had assumed that because I walked every day and moved through the world without incident, my balance system was being adequately maintained. This assumption is wrong, and it's wrong in a way that matters enormously, because by the time it reveals itself as wrong, it has usually already cost something significant. Balance is a skill. Like all skills, it is maintained by practice and lost by disuse. Unlike most skills, the loss is invisible until a specific event, a surface more uneven than expected, a moment of distraction, a change in light, a turn made slightly too quickly, creates a demand that exceeds whatever reserve still exists. The fall doesn't happen because the person's balance suddenly got worse in that moment. It happens because the reserve had been quietly depleting for months or years, and that moment was simply the first one that required more than what was left. The woman who never trains her balance because she has never had a problem is the woman who has the largest gap between what she believes her reserve is and what it actually is. She is the most surprised when the moment comes, and she is the least prepared. I go outside every day. This is not exercise in the way most people mean that word. It is balance practice. The world outside is not flat. It has cracks in the pavement and slight slopes and surfaces that shift underfoot, and gusts of wind and other people walking past who create small, unpredictable forces. Every time I navigate all of that, I am practicing the exact conditions under which falls happen. My balance system is being asked to work in real conditions with real variables. It is maintaining its capacity through use. On some days, I specifically walk on surfaces that are slightly irregular, the stone path in my garden, the uneven ground of the park near my house, the gentle slope of the street that I sometimes avoid in favor of the flat footpath. I walk on these deliberately, carefully, with full attention, because they are asking my balance system to do things that my living room floor will never ask it to do. I also do the thing I described earlier, the 30 seconds on one leg with eyes closed. Not every day. Enough para mantener la conversación entre mi cerebro y mi cuerpo que me mantiene erguido cuando el momento lo exige. Quiero terminar volviendo al martes por la mañana y al tocador. Ahora entiendo lo que pasó. Me levanté demasiado rápido. Estaba ligeramente deshidratado de la noche anterior. Estaba usando pantuflas de suela suave. Había estado confiando en mi visión para todo, sin entrenar nada más. Y no había estado pidiendo a mi sistema de equilibrio que hiciera nada difícil suficiente para mantener su capacidad. Cada uno de esos factores estaba dentro de mi control. Ninguno de ellos requería un diagnóstico, ni una prescripción, ni un especialista, ni dinero. Requerían atención. Llamé a mi hija esa mañana y le dije que había estado en el jardín. Te estoy diciendo ahora lo que realmente estaba haciendo. Parado junto al tocador, sujetándome, entendiendo por primera vez que había estado permitiendo que algo importante se debilitara sin mirarlo. Every day, in the small ways I described, the minute on the bed edge, the shoes inside the house, the water before anything else, the eyes closed moments, the 50-minute timer, the 2 minutes with cream on my feet, the log in the notebook, the deliberate walks on uneven ground. None of them are dramatic. Together they are the difference between a body that is working with me and a body that is quietly working against me in a way I hadn't noticed until I nearly needed that dresser more than I did. You don't have to wait for your own Tuesday morning. That's the whole point of this video. You have the information now. What you do with it is yours to decide.